Hello, hello, hello. Could the people in the corner start sitting down? All right. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone, to the second part of the program. I really hope you enjoyed the lunch. And Mr. President did send you on a mission. I hope you fulfilled that mission. For those who don't know. Anyway, so just a quote, just to open up the second session. Today is your opportunity to build the future you want, and that is from Ken Poirot. With that said, I'll also like to welcome the presence of our Honorable Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources, Utatu Kwete Mantashe, sitting in front here, and he's still going to give a keynote address much later on. Also, we are live streamed on YouTube, so if you go on Twitter, you hashtag SIAC and also hashtag Youth Job in Bezos. You can retweet that and also just share the link to other people out there who can engage and get to be part of this experience, basically. So without any further ado, I'd like to call up again Mr. President Kakana.
I'll say it again because I really, really believe in it. Forward with you, with jobs for young people, forward. Forward with mass job opportunities for young people, forward. Forward with massive business opportunities for young people, forward. Colleagues, I really hope that you enjoyed your break. It was quite long, but we are back, and we are back with a bang this time around. I truly believe, as Zinhle has indicated here, that you networked, you interacted with other young people, but most importantly, you interacted with the various stakeholders that are in this room. And we believe that through your interactions, this Jobs in Imbizo is going to yield job opportunities for some of you who are in the room. It's going to yield business opportunities for some of you are in the room, but most importantly, your partner could also be in this room, so you must interact and engage with each other. It's quite important. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, my job is very brief here. My job is very brief. I am here to introduce to you the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy. But before I do that, as I had indicated earlier, the role of the council is to make sure that a young person who is in Langa must find it valid post this event, that it is very possible to become like Avuyile, who grew up in Edujwa, but today sits as the chief economist at the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, having completed his Masters of Commerce from the University of Beijing. A young person who is in this room must be aware of the fact that it is very possible that business opportunity that is going to enable you to penetrate the ICT space is very valid. And conversations around strategic sectors of the economy, we refuse that those things must not be a preserve for white individuals. Those spaces must not be a preserve for old people. It is young black women who are in this room that must begin to have conversations around how do we penetrate the ICT space? How do we penetrate STEM-related fields to ensure that young people are represented and are benefiting but meaningfully contributing to the economy? The expanded version of youth unemployment is a crisis. It's extremely high. We need to have a direct intervention from government to such a crisis. But ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to a leader who sits as the national chairperson of the African National Congress, who currently serves as the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy, who has served as the Secretary General for 2 terms of the African National Congress. He said it would be esteemed if I introduce him to you as a communist who believes in creating black billionaires. And I said to him, those billionaires must also be young. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and give a resounding round of applause for the Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources.
Thank you very much. Let's start with the program director before I go to the president. Program director, thank you very much for the opportunity. President and the executive of SAYEC, is it called SAYEC? Hey, Kunzima. Delegates to this conference who are in the main young people. The executive of SAYEC believes that I'm young. They believe that. I have to explain to them over and over, guys, I'm not young, I'm just handsome. Please. All the distinguished guests that are present here today, let me commend the South African Youth Economic Council for successfully convening this imbizo. That in itself, it's a milestone that is important. Let alone what will be the outcome, who will emerge out of this and so forth. Just the ability of getting young people under one roof in itself is a massive breakthrough. The opportunity to allow young people to engage in discussions that are serious in itself is something that we need more. Actually, we don't need less of it. Because only when we do that will we change the mindset that I say, GP, we created. You know, in 1994, we introduced a term called delivery. Delivery. Which is a terrible term, actually, if you come to think of it, because it means people must just sit back, wait for a buggy to come and deliver. And irreality of that term is the creation of a very passive society that is not engaging, that is not engaged, that is not seeking to achieve anything. They want everything to be delivered. I was a Secretary General of the ANC. Before that, I was General Secretary of the NUM. We established an organization they called, it's a bursary scheme called JB Max Education Trust. We approved 200 bursaries every year. We created a reality of a local driver or a machine rock driller to give birth to an engineer. That was the dream. Where there was nothing more that we wanted to do. That's all we wanted, that a rock drill operator must be able to give birth to an engineer. A local driver must give birth to a geologist. We produced doctors, we produced many people in that scheme. But a little bit of my experience, President, is that once you take young people to school, they graduate, they take an honors degree and a master's degree, they come back to you and say, please look for a job for me. there's something wrong either with the system or with the attitude. Because when you're sent to school, you are given a fishing rod. Now, you can't say, here is my fishing rod, please come and catch the fish for me. You catch the fish because you've been given a fishing rod. I grew up in a place called Kala. It's a city in the Eastern Cape. Those who know. You're all shocked about this city. And, this city is on the foot of the Drakensberg. Okay, it's on the foot of the Drakensberg. It's on the snow belt. It's on the snow belt. It exports a very important commodity. It exports brains. That's what it does. I normally don't talk about this, Uguti. By accident, were two ministers in the cabinet from Kala, okay? And ironically, both of us have master's degrees. That's it. And that is what that city exports. That's what that city exports. It exports people with brains. Now, you have a responsibility here. It was described by Frantz Fanon that each generation must, out of relative obscurity, discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. Okay? And we're in this room discussing that reality. What is our mission as this generation? Are we going to fulfill it? Are we going to betray it? That's the question you're asking here. Nothing less, nothing more. Now, in South Africa, youth has a particular special role that they have played. I want you to take time, go back to the 40s, 1944. Young people formed the ANC Youth League. And you know that generation of young people led for 5 decades. 1944 to 1994, it's 5 decades. Osisulu, Mandela, you can list them, Tambo, you see. All of them are from a generation of young people who formed the Youth League in 1944. And when young people talk to me, they say, I'm a bit conservative. And I always explain to them that when you grow older, you become conservative. If you are not conservative and you are old, something is wrong with you. You can't just be a young person forever. You must be conservative. And I said to them, when they say, young people, this, you can't expect us to put you into responsibility on the basis of the certificate from Home Affairs. Can't be. That we go to Home Affairs and get a certificate, you were born on this day, in this year, and on the basis of that, we give you a responsibility. No. That Youth League of 1944 had 8 seats in a small NEC in 1949, and they were there, including the Secretary General, was elected from those young people. There was one reason that they were elected is because they developed a program of action and sold that program of action to the ANC, and it was accepted by the ANC conference in 1949. And on the basis of that, the elderly in the conference appreciated that for this program to succeed, architects of this program must be part of the program. Then 8 youth leaguers got into that NEC. I don't know when I volunteer. All I'm trying to say, I'm still talking to something called mindset. Mindset. Ukuti, young people are owed nothing. You are owed nothing. Actually, you owe it to yourselves to influence the direction of the country. The president asked me, hey, Sabane policy position, if the economic, you do want to music to Mamluku, ANC, Kuyo is economic transformation. But bring something written, a concrete, a practical, umnike, and then engage there. Then what you are discussing influences the direction of the country. That is the first advice I gave the president. Now, in 1976, young people revolted against an education system. Ebafunds Africans, they revolted, changed it, ran, flooded the camps of the ANC, changed the direction of the country. Many of the comrades who are actually leading today were youth in 1976. So, all I'm saying, comrades and colleagues, yabazi abanye abafuna ukuzwa comrade bahamba icawe comrades and colleagues, all I'm trying to say to you is that you owe it yourself to develop the future. Don't say to us, what are we going to inherit from you? You're going to inherit nothing from us. Nothing. You're going to inherit nothing. What you are going to inherit, you will determine. And the quality of what you are going to take over depends on your contribution now, not tomorrow, as young people. Now, I'm a mine worker. I started working in the mines many years ago. Majority of you were not born. You see? Majority of you were not born. It was January 1975. How many of you were born? Very few. Very few, if any. And when we went there, no black person was allowed to have a blasting certificate. Blasting certificate is a basic qualification for mining, blasting certificate. And therefore, as a consequence, you wouldn't produce mining engineers. Okay, because to be a mining engineer, you had to possess a blasting certificate, and the blasting certificate was reserved for a scheduled person. That is what was written in the law to code name a white person. It's reserved for a scheduled person, and we could not. To get that blasting certificate, before we come to that, in 1979, a copper miner in Northern Cape, Oak Cape, appointed a colored person as a miner and trained him in blasting certificate. Main workers in organized a national strike against that decision. That was reversed. Black South African only had access to a blasting certificate after the 1987 strike. That we call that 21 days that shook the chamber. One of the things we achieved in that strike was a blasting certificate for a black mine worker. 2 was a retirement fund for a black mine worker. 3 was a death cover of 36 months earnings if you die in the mine. Now, I'm giving you this history just to illustrate to you that you are owed nothing. You owe it yourself to roll your sleeves and shape the future that you desire to have. Now, I'm running a portfolio, mining and energy. Mining is doing well. Energy is not doing well yet. It has all the potential to do well. It's mining. When we had COVID in 2020, we had a lockdown. Sectors were closed. We discussed as a sector and took a decision which led to us being insulted and told that we are going to kill mine workers. We said at level 5, all coal mines must produce at full capacity. Eh? At level 4, we said every open cast mine must produce at full capacity. At level 3, we said mining must produce at full capacity. If I can download messages I receive from society to me as a person, as a minister that is stupid, who is going to kill mine workers, in whose hands the blood of my co-workers will be, you won't believe it. And I told them that the easiest way of killing these mine workers is to starve them to death. I'm opening it. Now, when there was recovery in 2021, one of the lead sectors to drive that recovery was mining. Mining saved the fiscus. I don't know if you remember this. Yeah. The money it paid to the fiscus in taxes were one of the few sectors that produced above the level we were at the beginning of COVID-19. It's not wisdom of an individual, it's what happens when you cooperate. I'm going to tell you of opportunities in the mining industry that you young people must take up. They're there. I was talking to a group of young people from Mpumalanga, President, saying to me, yeah, you are giving mines to the white monopoly capital. Eh? I turned back and said to them, listen guys, monopoly capital is monopoly capital irrespective of color. White monopoly capital, black, monopoly capital is monopoly capital. And I took them back and I said, listen, I want to give you 3 examples of success. Didikubo Anglo wanted to offload all the ESCOM-linked collieries, sell them. Black companies came and fought over it. It's until somebody called them around the table and said to them, you see, you're fighting for these assets, but if you would pull your resources together, you would, all 4 of you, own these assets. They accepted that, formed a company called Seriti, and they bought all those, and they went further to buy South 32 operations to form a big coal mining company, black-owned. Umamel. So Nadelba, land black ownership must not be a myth, it's a reality. In 1 year, a small group of people formed a company called ASIS, and they were given 2 shafts by Anglo and 2 shafts by Transnatal, and operated. They were producing 19 million tons per annum. They increased that to 25 million tons per annum. Then Kumba came and said, listen, one transformation, ASIS went there, they merged with Kumba and formed Exaro. Exaro. And blacks in Exaro owned 51% of that company. Okay. 3 years back or so, they came together and said, listen, we have huge debt. Let's sell 21% of this and remain with 30. They did that, they own 30 now. They are debt-free. A company called Exaro is more than 30% black-owned, and it is black-managed. Something unique happened this year. It is one of the 3 major companies in mining which is going to be headed by a female CEO, Nombasa Tsengwa, is heading it now. And she's adding to Isiu, who's a woman who runs Kumba iron ore, Umpumi, Skalan. It's running iron ore, enkulu Anglo by Northern Cape. ulandela an Afrikaner woman who runs Anglo Platinum, uFillion, Natasha. Now, abafazi bathathu, they run big mining companies. They are women. Now, xa ndithetha nani kabanisi benu, bathi, why ufaka Natasha is white? Now, I have to take them back in the history line, Chip, and said, the Nationalist Party was in power for 40 years. In that 40 years, they never produced a single Afrikaner CEO in mining, not one. Okay? All CEOs in mining were British. Okay? Now, when we liberated them and had a group of Afrikaner CEOs after 1994, and now we produced the first female CEO who Afrikaner, I mark that as progress. Now, here you are, you're young people. You want to change the world. Very good intention. One, don't shy away from education. Say one, education, isikolo. Khona into ekuthiwa sischool. Niyalonto? It's a long building with a row of doors and windows. Kayibizwa kuthiwa sischool. Don't be shy, don't shy away from that thing. It helps you. It continues to open your vista all the time. Many of us do not believe in black excellence. We associate black with mediocre performance, we associate black with failure, we associate black with corruption, we associate black with everything that is negative. One of the things that you have is to change that perception. Change that perception. Improve blacks can be excellent. The Chamber of Mines, the Mineral Council, has a first female president for the first time in 131 years, Unolita Fagut. The changes that are happening slowly in the industry in front of us, but because we're negative, we can't see them. Now, when you come and visit me, we'll take you to the coal fields and introduce to you a group of young owners. Young people own coal mines. There are many. That's why when I talk about coal mining, Chip, I'm not only talking about emissions, I also talk about its role in the transformation of the economy. The ENEC, a very befitting title, I'm a coal fundamentalist. Okay, because it is changing the composition. Now we're talking to them, say, guys, this thing here is under pressure, is on the back foot. Start thinking ahead. Begin to diversify so that you don't have your eggs in one basket. That's the discussion we're having with them. Now, it talks to something that is highly debated here, a just energy transition. Just energy transition. Actually, it debates about energy transition. Just, we have FAQA as a prefix, akana content. Duty to including yourselves is to put content to the just. Okay, the just. I took the deputy president of the ANC, Uba Umabuza. I took him to Mpumalanga and amahambisa ngehelicopter. ukusuka eBelfast yoma eDelmas, it's just one continuous stream of coal mining. Did you ever can take a just transition? You must know uba kweza stress suka eBelfast yoma eDelmas. Do you know towns that are covered by that? Did you tell her? It's Belfast, it's Middleburg, it's Wheatbank, it's Hendrina, it's Kriel, it's Woogis, it's Delmas. Those are the towns covered by that stretch of coal mining and coal generation of power. And therefore, just must not talk about numbers. It must talk about people and communities. Now, the idea is let's just transition, okay? What do we say about people? Let's just transition. What do we say about communities? Let's just transition. Comrade Chippy, we see any organization about climate change. We are tired of ESCOM, uswa eKomati power station. Uyokuboniswa i-transition izaba njani. Kuvalwa i-power station that was coal generation, replaced by renewables. Everybody comes back excited. The World Bank comes to my office with this excitement. And I ask them a few questions. I say to them, how many jobs have been created? They talk and they try to pull together numbers, and they come up to 260. And I ask them, how many have been destroyed? Bama. What do you mean? The Komati used to source its coal from Blankpan, which is today called Korenfontein. That colliery used to employ up to 2,400 people. Where are they? Ekomati itself used to employ just over 2,000 people at its peak. Where are those people? Now, if we don't ask that question and begin to understand Uguti, as we destroy those jobs, it's not numbers, it is people. And look into the impact of that destruction of jobs and quantify it in economic terms. Now, zikona economy zayibala loo nto. If we don't do that, ayizubakho just la transition. Sivana ke. Number two, ndithi kubo into ngaloyo ukuthi ndiyi-dinosaur ye-fossil fuels. Ndithi kubo kule transition, we must look into the potential of gas and oil. Because the transition is not transition from coal to renewables. It's transition from high carbon emissions to low carbon emissions. Okay? And gas generate emissions that are half and less of coal. So if we replace some of the capacity with gas, we are achieving our objective of reducing carbon emissions. There we are, when fossil fuel dinosaur. And I put that on my CV. Put the dinosaur, yes. But the beauty of this is that in South Africa, we are beginning to discover gas in huge numbers. Total Energy drilled in the Southern Cape and discovered 3.7 CTF of gas. CTF is cubic, what? Could I do it? CTF is cubic. Now, Mna is a social scientist, how do you expect me to know that? But if I say a huge deposit here gas, it's total. Kufika a delegation from the Western Cape Pagum, that thing, it jobs there to hippie land. I went to that drill rig twice, Chief, physically went there, and discovered ukuthi at the phase of drilling, efuna high-level skills, 194 of those engineers and other highly skilled people were South Africans. That debate fell flat. It's going to produce at about 2024, 5, 26. It is going to produce. And we wanted to link it to Petro SA and revitalize Petro SA. And young people must begin to look into those opportunities. What are the opportunities in that value chain? Energy. When you go down, go to a upstream. When you go up, go to a downstream. It's all in energy. So kufuneka young people kabedibene ngolu hlobo bathi ithini i-value chain from upstream to downstream. Where will we fit in? Where are our opportunities? Not only as workers, but also as entrepreneurs. We hounded Ishel out of the Eastern Cape. Yemka, a sharp, and Namibia of money oil earnings. The total Namibia of money oil earnings. Now, our suspicion is that La Oil is in Namibia, which is just north of the Orange River. Bigger part of it is in South Africa, south of the Orange River. And we're saying, we know we may end up in court for this, but we say, let's drill for that oil before the end of this year. Okay, it's in the Northern Cape. Let's drill for that oil, because that oil is going to impact on the economy positively. That's our argument. We'll see when we start whether we'll be taken to court, will it be stopped, and so forth. But we are convinced as a department that the South African waters have a lot of gas and a lot of oil, and you must exploit it. And young people must be part of that exploration. Okay? We're not going to not at houses, sitting here, explore, and there's a house on a pambi. Everyone must go for an opportunity, for a nuisance. Go for an opportunity, you must be a nuisance. A man must not relax, kind of an opportunity, no. When I can find messages, WhatsApp, but the next qualification, what about? Hey, all I'm saying is that it's a positive nuisance for me when young people do that. The geologists, the masters, and the Sabines, what do you think we can do? Yeah, I mean, they go to Council for Geoscience. Yeah, I mean, let geologists, the masters, it's not working. What can you do about it? But I come, Minister, while I'm for 2 years, can't figure out. I feel into so much and as the large geologist and the tent in geology was a the lab Council for Geoscience. Young people must wake up and follow opportunities and not wait for opportunities. Now, let me not take your evening. It's almost evening now. Siyakufo. Ngiyazivenda ukuthi ngamatekwane. Sesondela kumatekwane ngoku. Now, all I'm saying, change is affected by change architects and drivers. Okay? People who are suspicious of change and stand aside, they become victims of change. Okay? How are you victim of change? Uzongena into the negative narrative all the time. All the time, all the time. I want to challenge you to do this. read any report assessment ekuthiwa Fraser Institute assessment assess mining yalapha eSouth Africa. Kwi-investment attractiveness isibeka very low. But there's a contradiction. On the availability of labor and skills, isibeka very high. Okay. It is your job to convert the high level of availability and skills into an investment opportunity. Yabona ke mna ke into angangayifuni land white monopoly capital president yazi yintoni is because there's the assumption yokuthi investors are homegrown. We can't change investors. Kunto kuthiwa kwi-economy kuthiwa foreign direct investment. Foreign direct investment. So it's quite a serious concept. Kodwa we're nullifying it. It is the opposite of localization. No, it's not. If they have resources, let them bring us. But let's structure e-vehicles with our partnership nabo. Bona beze nemali, thina we bring reputation and we partner. Lastly, we've just released an exploration strategy for the department. It's developed with the industry. I talked to one premier, I won't tell you which one. The exploration was so angry with me. But yeah, you are changing our resolutions. Sitera nge beneficiation, uzange exploration one. I had to take him through back to basics. Did you want to fund mining? I-qualifications akhona ezintathu ziyanikezelana. Kunto kuthiwa i-geology, kunto kuthiwa i-mining engineering, kunto kuthiwa i-metallurgy. Okay, i-geology is to look for the minerals. I-mining engineering develop the mining and take the mineral out of the ground. I-metallurgy separate the mineral from the rock. That's the value chain. And I said to him, Yabona ke Premier, if you don't do exploration, you'll have nothing to beneficiate. Let's invest in exploration, we discover more minerals so that we have a lot at our disposal for beneficiation. So, you are all students and graduates and all that and all that. That knowledge must help us develop a policy. My belief, Chief, is that what is going to change our growth trajectory is going to be oil and gas in this country. When I say that, it makes environments very angry, but it's real. But I'm hoping that because we are an encircled country, encircled, Chuguti, you are a small economy. You are not given space to think and analyze. You are converted into a conduit for the ideas of big economies. Okay? It's a close situation, and we must liberate ourselves from that. Sizinike space to think. Xa sinikwa i-131 billion rand, Chipe, by developed countries, they cannot say to us, we give you this money, move out of coal. They must say, here is the money. Use it in the transition from high carbon to low carbon emission. And that money must be directed to our own plans and programs. Otherwise, we're encircled, we're a conduit of developed economies. I think I must stop there. It's a subject I love most. I can talk the whole afternoon and evening on it because I think it is going to determine our future and opportunities for young people. But if young people are absent in the debate, they will be victims of that debate. Thank you very much. May I call upon the program director? Otherwise, nakuranela le program.
Can we please give the minister one more round of applause? Thank you very much. And I think the minister gave us a very great opening about what it means to unlock opportunities for young people. Is everything okay? Oh. Okay. Okay. And I think to dive deeper into a lot of the themes that the minister spoke on, we're going to head over to our last panel discussion for today. And the topic for the panel discussion is on building a social compact. If you've listened to the State of the Nation address or any address these days by government officials, the main theme that you'll hear is social compact. And we need to break down what this means for youth-owned businesses, for young professionals, for unemployed graduates, and how the social compact can help us really improve the numbers when it comes to employment in this country. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to the moderator for this conversation, who is going to be Noluthando Zulu. Please give her a round of applause.
Is Wasim not joining?
Yes, he is.
Is the minister in my seat? Is the minister in my seat?
I think so.
Honorable Minister, you're in my seat. I'm supposed to sit there. I'm supposed to sit there. I'm supposed to sit here as the moderator. Okay, you can sit there. You can sit there. Okay. Oh. Okay. Wasim, please join us on stage. Good afternoon, everyone. I am joined on this panel today by, of course, the Honorable Minister. Should I come closer or am I fine here? Yeah, in the middle. I am joined on this panel today by, of course, the Honorable Minister after his incredible keynote address, which was full of many insightful gems. And I am also joined And I'm also joined by Wasim Karim, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the National Youth Development Agency, NYDA. Now, the mining industry has played a significant role in this country. I speak from personal experience. Mining goes back to the 1850s in this country, where copper was extracted in the Northern Cape. And then, of course, mining took off when diamonds were discovered in Kimberley in 1867. Post then, there was the discovery of gold and platinum, which contributed towards the building of the South African economy, and for a very long time was the backbone of the South African economy, and also played an incredible role in the social fabric of South Africa. The mining industry employed hundreds of thousands of people, but over time, as most economies do, they grow from being third world to first world. And as South Africa is transitioning, we are moving out of being heavily dependent on tertiary projects such as farming and mining. And financial services are now the key contributor towards the South African economy. But mining still plays an important role. And as the Honorable Minister mentioned, the mining industry was the saving grace of this country during the lockdown of 2020 and 2021, with the incredible commodities boom and the taxes that were paid to the government, which actually aided and assisted the government in their ability to contribute towards the 350 Rand grants that were given to the poorest in this country. But the mining industry is not the mining industry of the 70s and the 80s. It has declined substantially, currently contributing to about 8% of the GDP and employing almost 450,000 people. Now, I speak passionately about the mining industry, as I too am a beneficiary of this incredible industry. And a lot has changed from when I started in the industry to today. In 2012, I started working as an underground miner. I got my qualification in geology in 2010 and completed my honors degree in 2011. I had a bursary with a certain power producer that you may have heard of, and I was a top student in my university. I was actually in the top 1% of the university, but let's not get into my academic record. And in doing so, in achieving my incredible results in my first year, I was given a list of mining companies that wanted to give me a bursary. And I, of course, chose the national power producer, wanting to be a civil servant and contribute towards this country. But in 2011, in November, as I was about to complete my honors degree, the power producer said to me that we don't have a job for you. We're currently going through a crisis. I picked up the phone and called all the people who had offered me a bursary when I was in my second year in 2009, and I got a job by Friday. If you had a mining qualification, in 2011, coming out of my class, every single one of us in January 2012 walked into a job. Today, I speak to geologists who went to the same university that I did, got the same qualification from the same lecturers, and they say, I've been sitting at home for the past 2 years. There has been a massive decline in the opportunities that are available in our industry for many reasons, one of them being the low investment in the industry in this country, but also the mechanization and the changes that have occurred in this industry. And I'm here to ask the Honorable Minister a few questions, just how we maneuver around the different changes that are occurring. And as he already mentioned, the Fraser Institute came out with a report which ranks South Africa quite low, I think 10th worst, in terms of attraction of investment for companies with regards to mining. And as the Honorable Minister has said, there's a high number of extremely skilled people in this country. South Africa is well known for setting engineering standards and mining standards. The deepest mines in the world are found in South Africa, and that is because of the skill sets that we have in this country. So the question is, what are we doing wrong, and how do we find our way out of this? And Honorable Minister, how in the short term and long term do we speak to this low investment ranking and work our way back up and become that destination that was in the 70s and the 80s, the place to be for mining?
You describe mining as having declined drastically. I don't accept that.
All right.
Let me tell you the difference. The difference is, for a long time, mining was equated to gold mining.
Yes.
And gold mining, after 120 years of mining, has begun to decline. Gold mining.
Gold mining, yes.
Okay. The other minerals are discovered every day.
Yes.
So the size of mining has not declined.
Yes.
That's why I'm a great believer that mining is not a sunset industry, it's a sunrise industry. I don't say that as a slogan, I believe in it. If you look into PGMs, for example, the deepest PGM will go, if it is 1 kilometer deep, it's too deep.
It's too deep, yes.
While in gold mines, the deepest is 4 kilometers.
4 kilometers, yes.
So that's where the difference is. If you go to massive open cast mining, you open mining into mechanization, you are correct there. And it employs less. When I worked for a colliery, I worked for a copper mine actually in the Northern Cape. My longest job service was in that copper mine. But I'm not called a copper fundamentalist.
But you're called a coal fundamentalist.
I'm called a coal fundamentalist. But the years are shorter in coal than in platinum, than copper. Yes, in terms of the contribution to the GDP, it has come down.
Yes.
But there's something strange with this coming down on the contribution to the GDP. Its contribution on foreign earnings has not come down. It's still about 40% of foreign earnings in South Africa from mining. Contribution is about 8.7%. Last year it touched 9.1 for a short period. So I thought I must talk to those issues first. Number two, I'm a father of four. Okay. I wonder about names. And a grandfather of 6. I'm just confirming the fact, Chief, that I'm not young, I'm just handsome. Nobody believes this story of me being handsome, you know. I don't know why. You see, all of them, 3 of them are working, 1 is a school. All of them, not one of them is working for the government. I don't have a child who works for the government, okay? All of them are in the private sector. All of them struggle for their own survival in the private sector. And they're doing relatively well there. Because they understand that there's no profession or a qualification called mandash.
Yes.
There's no such a qualification. There's no such a profession. So people must invest in their own individual professions to survive, and that's what they do. Lastly, what is it that we're doing wrong? The Fraser Institute interviews CEOs of companies. Okay. If in those CEOs interviews, they badmouth the country, you're going to be rated low. But if CEOs in Australia and Canada talk nicely of their governance and the country, they're going to rate it top. And I've set up a meeting with the Mineral Council. I want to see the CEOs. And I want to know which CEOs were interviewed. I don't know if you have been following articles released by a man called Neil Froneman.
Yes, CEO of
late.
Sibanye Stillwater.
Now, Neil Froneman released all negative articles about the country.
Yeah.
And obviously, we're not going to be rated higher until we talk to him to say, listen, man, just speak honestly about the country. He's refusing to give an increase of 1,000 rand to workers, and he earns 300 million in 1 year. But he badmouths the country for that money. That is what we're doing wrong. And I'm talking to both of what we're doing wrong and why they're low ranking. Companies must appreciate that we are a country. And the country doesn't belong to a government. The country belongs to all of us together. What we want to do with our country is what our country will be. In my language, Google expression 80, umlomo uyadala. Okay, umlomo uyadala. That means
The mouth
when you
creates,
say something,
it becomes.
you are creating something. If you say you are a bunch of fools, we are going to appear in public as a bunch of fools. Because that's what we believe in, that's what we say all the time, and that is what is happening with mining. It's doing well. Actually, it is paying huge dividends to investors today.
Absolutely.
And it is contributing huge amounts of tax. And that is not a failing sector. It's a successful sector. But the cyclical behavior of commodity prices is a reality that we must always build in. I want to stop there.
Well, before I continue to our other speakers, I would like to just build upon that, Honorable Minister. As you had mentioned, the sector has had currently in the highs of the cyclical nature, and the sector has seen an incredible rise in prices of certain commodities, primarily driven by the decarbonization story. So there's a high demand for commodities which we actually have in this country. So I'm talking about manganese in the Northern Cape, lithium, zinc, copper, which we all have in this country, and therefore there's a big need, as you had mentioned, for an incredible rise in exploration in those regions, and of course attracting the investments to be able to develop the assets within those regions. The mining industry is hundreds of years old in this country, and you also touched on the fact that certain jobs and certain roles were reserved for white and for men specifically. How is the government of today working to ensure that with the need to increase exploration, drilling, development of mines, we're not only bringing along black people, we're bringing along the youth as well in terms of taking full advantage of the opportunities that is from drilling to extraction, as you had mentioned in the value chain?
In approving the exploration strategy, we equally approved the first 200 million rand on exploration. There is also an allocated 2 billion rand on exploration. But the reality is that that exploration allocation will not work unless we partner with the private sector that want to do exploration, including small entrepreneurs. Okay. You will have noticed that in the charter, one provision we've removed was a requirement for is a requirement for a strict PE requirements for exploration. We said if a big company wants to do exploration, you don't need a PE for exploration because exploration, you are looking for a mineral. Then the charter kicks in when you begin to mine. And the reason for that, we're trying to encourage exploration. So we're hoping that with this new strategy that we've just gazetted, there will be more interest there. Now, the demand on the kind of mineral, for example, Namibia has discovered a deposit of rare earth elements.
Yes.
Our initial test of the area on our side, we discovered that what they discovered is 20%, 80% of rare earth minerals is on our side. That's why the Northern Cape is the province of the future.
Yes.
When it comes to exploration, mining, and growth. You would have noticed that during the last year and early now this year, we've ran 4 investment conferences in provinces. We had the first one in Limpopo, the second one in Northwest, the third one in the Northern Cape. And our view as a department, of a team here, we believe that is the future mining corridor of the country. Northern Cape, Northwest, and Limpopo. Because Free State is in decline.
Yes. Mpumalanga.
Klerksdorp area is in decline. Coal mining is under siege. And therefore, we're developing that belt for the future.
Thank you, Minister. With that being said, I'm going to move on to our other speakers. I am biased towards the mining industry, so I could sit and speak to the Minister.
It's a good bias, actually.
It's a good bias, yes.
I'm sitting in between two miners.
Yeah, he's sitting in between two mine workers who could spend all day speaking about the mining industry. But we are joined on Zoom by the CEO of Gijima, which is Mr. Mapum Nxumalo. Am I correct in saying Nxumalo? Yes. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much. So the mining industry, the country and the world globally are being driven by two key themes. And the two key themes that are driving demand for commodities, demand for resources, are primarily the decarbonization story, as the Minister and I have touched on, with the minerals that are required, your rare earth elements, your zinc, your coppers, your nickels. But another story which is incredibly important, not only to South Africa, I don't know if you can hear me, I'm actually gonna hold my mic. Not only to South Africa, but globally, is the story of the fourth industrial revolution. And the Minister spoke about incredible success stories of Black entrepreneurs in the mining space. I think it's without saying that Gijima is an incredible story of Black entrepreneurs in the tech space. So with the importance of the tech space and with the importance of the rise in the fourth industrial revolution, how many opportunities lie within this space for young people and unlocking the economy and creating jobs that is driven by the tech space? If you could just take us through some of your thoughts on that, Mr. Nxumalo.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invite. Maybe first let me declare that I'm also a miner.
Oh, you see, this panel is biased.
I worked in the mines. I worked for the Anglo-American Minister of Development, Eastern Gold and Uranium Company. I was there in the quotation plant and I spent years for gold, uranium, and sulfuric acid, from the dams, so that was surface mining. But I was trained in the Free State, in the President's State and President Plan as in mining before I switched over to IT. So I just wanted to declare that I'm also passionate about mining because I spent time there about 4 years in mining. But then just coming to IT, especially with reference to any opportunities that are there for young people. I must first say, in fact, just that just taking words from the minister, those words of wisdom, because that's very important to me. But I'll summarize what he was saying in terms of skills, that all development is self-development. I think we should be to bear that in mind, that development or self-development, if you want to grab and take the opportunities. Now, you see, what is important, and exciting about technology is that it touches all spheres of our working environment. There's no industry that is not touched by technology, and especially IT, as the first thing. So that on its own just tells you that the opportunities are enormous, but are therefore to be grabbed. So the question that, are we ready? Is our youth ready for that? So when we talk of, is it a buzzword or is it something that we can jump into and never miss the train, as we have done, with the internet, for instance, in the third industrial revolution, where we never exploited and explored in the internet, so that then we can create more jobs from that. So that's very important to understand. And I think we should differentiate between acquiring degrees and acquiring skills. Those are two different things. So if I come with a BSc in IT, it tells an employer or somebody that prospective that to work with me, that I'm teachable. That's all. That I'm able to absorb. But then I need to develop skills that then can tend to produce work and also produce opportunities for myself and for others as it were. So that is very, 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 very important. Now, where we are now, the advent of the 4IR, I mean, which is talks to automation, talks to artificial intelligence, talks to the Internet of Things, and also to the oil of today, you know, which is big data. Because big data today is what needs to be mined, and there's so many opportunities in that space. That is why the likes of us as DGIMA, we also have what we call the School of Digital Technology, because that's where it's happening. So there's a lot that is happening. We have turned a lot of internship and done that through with government and produced a number of people, a number of skills. But how can we then create opportunities that those people can find work and be employed? I think that's what we should be asking ourselves and be dealing with.
Absolutely. And one of the conversations that we actually had yesterday was about the jobs of tomorrow. And of course, the fourth industrial revolution and the tech space offers many jobs that are jobs of tomorrow. Jobs that we didn't know existed 10 years ago are now possible because of, you know, the increase of technology. I made an example of the fact that when I started working on the mine 10 years ago, the mine was the mine. And today I walk into some head offices and mining companies and you see visuals of what's happening underground, or you see drones that are flying over looking at the stockpile, something which did not exist a mere 10 years ago when I was on site. But the question that I have, especially for someone in the tech space, is in South Africa, we have a high unemployment rate. It's even worse when you're looking at youth unemployment rate. The key way of pulling people out of poverty, especially with the high unemployment rate like we have, is through critical mass. And that's why industries such as the mining industry, which employs hundreds and thousands of people, are so important because they take on the critical mass, low-level skilled people, people with, you know, without an education, and so on and so forth. There's an element of elitism when one talks to the fourth industrial revolution, talking about big data, talking about data mining. How do we bring this conversation to the masses, and how do we use the fourth industrial revolution and technology to pull more people out of poverty in this country?
Right, thank you. Maybe just to bring this into context, I mean, I'm just relate this story. I will say it's a story, but it's a history that has happened, you know, in the past, and it delivered good. You know, on the 6th of September, 1939, outbreak of Second World War. It started in Poland. And on that day, Russia facing the Germans, eventually the city of Warsaw was flattened. That war, as we know, ravaged and reigned until 1945. But what's remarkable about the Polish people, what they did thereafter, they decided that they need to rebuild the city of Warsaw, which today is a tourist attraction. And in doing that, government mobilized big business and labor. And on top of that was education, because they had to educate people so that then they can be able to use their skills. But how they did it, they took all those young ones, gave them testing in order to stratify them, to put them in various lines of discipline whether it was architect, whether it was electronics, or the electronic engineer, whether it was IT, whatever the individual was capable in terms of those tests that they done, everyone was accommodated. And they used then the colleges that they had, which in terms of ourselves, we can use the TVET for those students then in those various disciplines to be trained in those disciplines. And there was a practical element into it. But what is very important and very key, which you need to consider, there was a project, a grand scale that was of the country, that was of importance of the rebuilding that city back to its original state, that motivated people. And it was done by the police for themselves, and the young people were mobilized to that. Now, then they killed two soldiers. I mean, two birds with one stone, because now you gain the skill by being practical on the field, and secondly, then you got a certificate. Sure, that's it. But how they motivated these two big business, which in our case could be something also in the BEE, those companies with engineers, with all these different skills, were allowed to spend hours in the college, in the field with those students, and got accreditation for that. You know, a scoring in terms of their companies. So that's how the government also was able to spend the money in an efficient way, in that way. And also the subsistence that is happening. It's happening in South Africa in a great scale. The government is doing great job for that. But I see sometimes we miss a point in terms of how we exploit that and use it in a way that will benefit. When I talk about, I said CETA, for instance, in our space in IT, that's subsistence that is used. In Poland, it was used a different way, because a student will be taking, how many are you at home? We are 3. We have lost all the parents. Get a ration for the day. Every day, that is taken care of. Transportation, you know? So it's not that now I must be rich or I must get money, but I'm gaining skill, but gaining that skill, I'm also supported by government, and big business came to the party. Now you talk about mass scale. I mean, how can you do that in the IT side? You know, if you take what we like to achieve in terms of broadband, and also, you know, laying off of the fiber, the Wi-Fi, because those are enablers in order then to make a 4R thrive. Why are we not using young people in their communities, training on those specific things on the TVET colleges, bringing big business like Huawei, for instance, that all those gadgets, I mean, in terms of implementation, digging of the trenches, laying off the fiber, and also programming those routers is done by the young people, the locals getting a training, also doing it practically in that way, as such. That will create more jobs and create more opportunities in terms of the SMMEs to thrive. So that is very key, if we could be looking at them. Yes, education best, but remember, getting a degree of BSc is giving you not that skills, but it's preparing you to be able to absorb that. You have that theory that a learner driver will have when he has passed the learners, but he's not yet a driver until he drives. So that is very important, and get a driver's license.
Thank you very much. The key theme seems to be collaboration. And we all know that economic welfare will only be achieved through social compact, that is, coming together of civil society, government, and big business. Now over to the only person who's not a minor on this panel. You are at the NYDA, and the NYDA is being put in place to address issues that face young people. So what work is the NYDA doing in terms of assisting young people in raising funds for their small to medium enterprises. And I asked us specifically in terms of working with organizations such as the Public Investment Corporation, the IDC, and the NEF. They, like many other asset managers, have obviously the investment leg where I used to work in terms of listed investment, but they also have a private equity where there's obviously much higher risk and venture capitalism. But we don't seem to see a large number of young people coming through the ranks and thriving through partnerships with the PIC and NEF and IDC. How are you assisting in terms of bringing young people to the table and bringing those big heavy hitters that hold the funds to the table and being a conduit of the conversation of building young business?
Yeah, thanks, Noluthando. So I want to answer your question more broadly than just SMME funding, right? I want to maybe speak a bit more about the youth unemployment issue we face in South Africa, because I think SMME funding is one piece of solving that very large, bigger puzzle, right? So, I mean, when the sixth administration started and President Ramaphosa came to office, I can tell you it's something, the youth unemployment rate, which is the worst in the world now, is something that keeps the president up at night. Yeah? And it's not something that we feel good about at any point in time. And the president asked business, labor, government in that social compact to go away and look at what are the structural issues that are preventing, young people from entering the labor market and come back with a plan. And that plan eventually became the youth employment intervention. And the president said, let's do 5 things and let's do them well, right? So the first thing was to say is that there's many barriers in entering the labor market. High cost of transport, high cost of data. How do we break down those barriers for young people? Yeah? We said, at any given point in time in South Africa, there is demand for opportunities. Yes, we have an unemployment issue, but at any point in time, if we measure, there's between 300,000 to 500,000 available opportunities that are going unfilled in the labor market because of lack of matching of supply and demand in the economy. Yeah? And we said if we could aggregate everything into one platform, speaking about the things that we've spoken about today, using technology and the fourth industrial revolution. And today we have what we call a National Pathway Management Network, SAYouth.mobi, where a young person anywhere in the country using a feature phone or a smartphone at no data cost to themselves can log on, create a profile, and be linked to a learning or earning opportunity closest to where they live. Yeah? Now, that is solving one side. So not only a supply side intervention, but also a demand side, right? Aggregation of opportunities into one place. What are some of the structural impediments? And this is where I think social compacting comes into it, is that what you'll realize is that in recruitment, both in the public and the private sector, there is a great deal of patronage that goes on. Yeah? And what you find is even when you go to big organizations like BUSA and BLSA and you say, encourage your members to list opportunities on the platform, there's a slight pushback to be able to do it because people want to be in control of recruitment. And when we talk about social compacts, it's important, I think it's not about sitting around the table and saying, this is what we'll do, this is what we'll do. It's about the trade-offs and the changes that you're willing to make life better for those who are marginalized and vulnerable in society. So that was one piece. And I think that's starting to come together better than before. 2 was to say, yes, we do face severe skills shortages in South Africa. Yeah? Many of the skills, you go to FNB or Standard Bank's IT departments, you'll find that those jobs are filled by foreign nationals. Yeah? And we know we face some degree of skills shortages in South Africa. So we said, let's look at the sectors that we know are growing, right? Where it's not difficult to be able to train young people and place them into job opportunities. But what you'll find is if you look at the history of the last 10, 15 years, the real people who have profited of youth unemployment is private training providers. We've trained and we've given young people certificates, but with no expectation that must lead to jobs at the end of it. Yeah. So on the model that we implement now, we appoint training providers on a pay-for-performance model. That is, before you apply for funding from government to train and place young people, you must prove that you already have demand-side opportunities for those young people. And the areas where we see that, we've already launched the first cohort of about 4,500 young people in digital, tech, global business services. What you do find is the sectors that are growing is global business services. South Africa has recently overtaken India as the #1 provider for global business services in the world. Yeah? Automotive. Our automotive industry has always stood out as one of the best globally. Yeah? There's a huge opportunity right from the automotive mechanic in Khayelitsha right up to the Ford factory in Mamelodi, right? Agriculture, including cannabis, a huge amount of opportunities. But you have to make sure you cull the vested interest, which is private training providers, which exist simply to profit off youth unemployment. So that was 2. 3 is the one you spoke about, right? And look, I think that we have had many funding agencies in South Africa. The NYDA, we had CIFA and CEDA this morning, the NEF, IDC. But I think it is important to recognize that access to finance is just but one piece of the puzzle, right? I do think that private equity and venture capital has created many black millionaires and to some extent billionaires in this country, right? So it is possible, right? The PAFEC funds many projects, right? But what it's probably doing is not benefiting at a scale enough to change the trajectory of poverty and inequality in South Africa. And when we drill down into these access to finance opportunities that we see in the country, what we also see is that word keeps coming back about an ecosystem that works for young people, yeah? Or that works where small and micro businesses are able to thrive. And we said, what can we do to be able to fix the ecosystem that makes it easier for business or small business to do better? We came across a couple of things, right? If you could get a low-cost broadband connectivity solution into households, into businesses, that is already a big step for a lot of small businesses, right? If you could get better public infrastructure, and when I talk about it, I'm not saying an entire infrastructure upgrade, but if you could get one street in Alexandria, there was a high street, there was high quality in nature where business could set up, you had better chance of small entrepreneurs being able to thrive there. 3, if you could get local money circulating. We know that most SASSA money comes in, it goes out to the big retailers, right? As you could get local money circulating a little bit better through innovative pay kind of solutions, you could start to fix things for small businesses. The last one I want to mention is aggregators, right? We've seen the success of companies like Sweep South or Kendua, where a domestic worker who would have earned 2,000 or 3,000 is now able to monetize their skill and is able to earn 8,000 to 10,000 a month, right? So the Jobs Fund has released their 10th call for proposals, solely grant money, asking for solutions or private companies to come on board and say, we will match 50-50 grants which help to solve these problems in communities. Public infrastructure, connectivity, aggregation. So that was 3. Number 4, workplace experience. At any point in time in South Africa, you have 250,000 TVET graduates who've done their theoretical component but have no space to do workplace experience. That means they can't get the qualification and they can't become active labor participants. For now, we've introduced a subsidy through the Youth Employment Service for at least 10%, 25,000 of them to be placed and government to cover the cost of the stipend so that they can get their workplace experience, they can become active participants in the economy. The last one, the president said, in South Africa, we can't do what we want to do if we don't have social cohesion. And we've never really focused too much on social cohesion post-1994. It's always been a policy of the ANC government that we should have in some way or form a structured national youth service program in South Africa. And this is no different to many other countries, right? In the United States, if you don't want to go to college, if you don't want to start your own business, what options are available for you? You can go and volunteer, right? Not necessarily. I mean, youth service always become about militarization of the country. But in the United States, you can go and you can work in public schools and you can become part of Teach for America, right? So right now, the NYD is recruiting 50,000 young people to become part of a structured 12-month youth service program. That when I leave school, I can enter into a program where I offer service in my community, I can earn an income for doing it, and I can increase my skills and employability. And putting all of these pieces together was important. Now, I think that we've made progress. I think that the 6th administration has been very unlucky in that we've had COVID. Floods, unrest, and many other issues as well. But you play the hand that you dealt. But all of these things that I've said is not, you can do all of these things. But fundamentally, you have to get this economy to grow, right? And I want to add on to what the minister said, is that if you want a social compact, you have to make trade-offs, right? Not everybody is going to be happy. Right now, in Cape Town, and I don't want to get maybe into the details of it, but right here, Amazon Web Services wants to come and establish a massive, and it's being blocked by different interests, right? And I don't want to get into the merits of different interests. But if you chase away business, you get to a point where they say, listen, we don't want to anymore, you know? And you lose that opportunity for investment. But you have to fix the structural problems in South Africa's economy. You can do all of the things I said we can do. But if a young person has a laptop, but they don't have energy because of load shedding, right? Or they don't have Wi-Fi, you're not going to achieve what you want to do. So fundamentally, you have to fix the structural issues in the economy. And doing that, plus government interventions, will hopefully get us to the promised land if we want to achieve our youth employment goals. Sorry for the long
That was excellent. Thank you very much. We are running out of time, but I do have just one or two questions. Wasim, we are sitting in a room with multiple graduates, and I think everyone here knows a graduate who is sitting at home. Do you believe that in this country we have a misalignment of skills with the requirement, or where is the issue? Are we producing the wrong type of graduate for what is required for this economy to grow?
So I think there's a couple of ways to answer that question, right? Is to say that the lack of economic growth over the period of time. So me and you would have entered the labor market
10 years ago.
Yeah, 10 years ago, 2008. We're just coming, it was just after the global financial crisis. South Africa had done relatively well, right? To weather the storm of that. In the years subsequent to that, load shedding and many other issues in the global markets have affected, and our economy has not grown. For a graduate entering 10 years later, it's much harder than it was for me and you. The opportunities are much more limited, right? But if you think about it, we had a very progressive form of taxation that we introduced, right? We said let's introduce the skills development levy, right? And we said companies with fairly large payrolls, if you have more than 50 employees, you would contribute a percentage of your payroll, and it would be collected by SARS as part of the skills development levy. And we put that into the National Skills Fund, and we put it into the sector education training authorities. And that, the SETAs are really the bridge between education, higher education predominantly, and industry, right? Facilitating that bridge through bursaries, internships, graduate programs, subsidies to the sector to be able to employ people, yeah? And in many ways, I feel good about the work that the SETAs are doing. I think it's not being achieved at scale in some cases, right? And I think the scale probably needs to be looked at here. I do think there is a challenge with universities who continue to offer degrees to young people where employment opportunities are limited on the other end here. And I think universities do need to be called out in that aspect there. I think universities have an obligation to test the labor market for the need for those qualifications, right? Because I really do believe in this thing that we need to train for actual demand in the economy, right? And the economy is moving at a much faster pace than it was ever in the history of society. And we've got to be agile and be able to keep up with that there. But I also think that there's a case in South Africa where if a young person goes to school, goes to university, and goes through that process, I was trained to be an accountant. I do very little of what I was trained to do for. University, to a large extent, teaches you to think and to make decisions under pressure. I do think that there's a case in South Africa that we introduce some level of employment clarity, at least at a graduate level. I don't think it reflects well on society that we have the number of unemployed graduates that we do sitting at home. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And prior to my closure, I do have one last question for our Honourable Minister. Thank you. But before I ask the question, I think when we come to these panels and we have, you know, honourable ministers and members of parliament and members of our government, we do a lot of bashing and we don't give enough compliments. So I recently completed my master's degree in mining engineering, and I was looking at women in mining. And the Honourable Minister, of course, mentioned the rise of representation in the industry. I myself, like I mentioned, am a number of one of the women in the industry. But it's not just about getting women in the industry. When I looked at a study that was done in 2008, one of the key issues that women spoke about was safety. They did not feel safe going underground. And one of the key issues in mining, not only for women, but for people in general, was how safe the mines were. The government, alongside working with mining companies in collaboration, went on a massive drive to ensure the safety of all workers. South Africa has incredible safety standards when it comes to mining. In 2008, 170 people died in South African mining operations, and that number has continued to come down, and in 2020, that number was 58. In the study that I submitted to the university, I interviewed 30 women working on operations across this country. Of all the issues they mentioned, not a single woman mentioned how unsafe the mines felt. And that is due to the work that was done to tell men that women belong on operations, women are your equals, and women here are here to work. So while there is a plethora of issues, it was incredible to see that the work that had been done by the government in collaboration with the mining companies was actually being felt on the mine, and women did not feel unsafe. But with that being said, there incredible numbers that you mentioned, and it's incredible to know that Nombasa is coming on as the CEO of Exxaro. Incredible women, Mpumi Zigalala, who I worked with, and Natasha Viljoen as well. Not only incredible people, but extremely qualified women leading up massive mining operations. There is still a lack of female representation in terms of people participating in the value chain, women participating in the value chain. There are very few women-owned businesses. So while we can sit here and talk about the representation of women now taking up 3 roles in the top 10 listed mining companies in South Africa, women are not fully extracting value from the industry. So the question is, how is the department working in collaboration with the mining industry to ensure a higher participation of women in extracting value from the value chain, enterprise development of women-owned businesses, and ensuring that women who have the right skills are rising up the ranks in the mining industry?
When we started the campaign for women to work in the mines, there was a time when women were not allowed altogether.
Yes.
We set a target of 10% being women. That number today is 12%.
It's actually 13 now. It's 13. 13%.
13 today.
Yes.
Then it's 13 today. But that 13 is either a function of decline in numbers,
Yes.
or whatever, but it's roughly, when it was 12, it was 53,000 women working in the mines. That 53,000 is small in terms of the size of mining.
Yes.
One of the issues we discovered when we were fighting for this campaign was that, for example, you can't, even if you want equality, it will be immoral to say to women must drill rocks. It will just be immoral. It's a terrible job. You lie on your back, you put a rock drill through a rock and to drill it hard. It can't be given to women. But one thing that was proven, again, in the experiments that were conducted, was that in jobs that require precision, women are better than men.
Yes.
Actually, in driving big tip trucks and open cars, women are better than men. And when that was researched, we discovered that it's because for men, everything is a war. Now, as a result of that, they drive trucks, they roll them. Women don't roll the truck, they stop at the edge and load the truck and move on. So they were going through a journey there of women doing better. Actually, in my last research, one of the things I looked into was where do women do better? We discovered that actually in management, women are emerging to be doing better. And the reason for that is they are breaking the culture of to be a manager and executive, you must discuss rugby. They are beginning to come with soft skills into the business of mining. And they actually relate to their subordinates better than men.
Yes.
Now, as a mine worker, I worked with a manager who used to be called McDonald. McDonald believed that if you are having a conflict at the ground, you must just beat one another up. And that's it. You resolve the problem. We had to take them through process of labor law requirements.
Yes.
A big process to take managers through that process. We're at that now. But the point I'm making is that we're not having a big army of women coming into the entrepreneurship in mining. We're having women in mining. We're having women in mining. To me, it's a bit small and it's not aggressive enough to open up the space. And there are a few reasons for that. For me, the main is you are in women in mining. You are looking for an opportunity as an individual. It's difficult to carry the responsibility of opening up space for women. You are more working for a space for yourself.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I think there's something that we can do. I'm sure the young Sayek.
Sayek.
Yes. Sayek can play a role in actually developing an approach to that space, because what is more important is to open space for women collectively. The problem with collectivity, it's a concept that I use a lot, is that it refuses to look into the attributes brought by every individual
100%.
to the collective.
100%.
It just talk about a collective approach, it's us, it's ours, and so forth, and never assess the actual attributes brought by every individual. Until we reach that stage, we are going to battle to survive. Mining is different today, I agree with that. Social compacting is theoretically correct, but practically very difficult.
Yes.
You know, I went to NetLec a few months ago. We talked about it. And I took them through the case study of Ireland. I said for social compacting to work in Ireland, businesses had to commit to invest X amount of money in X sector. And labor had to commit to take moderate wage increases. And that government had to agree to allow tax holidays and tax reduction in particular sectors. I don't think we've reached that level in South Africa. You go to a meeting to discuss social compacting, union give you a long list of demands that you must meet. Business come to you and believe that you are a bunch of very stupid people. It is them who have a monopoly of knowledge, and it doesn't work. That's why we end up walking out of each other. And we need to change the mindset. That's my view.
Thank you very much, Minister, and thank you to my panelists. Please do stay on Zoom. I will be taking 4 questions, so please do put your hand up. I have 1 hand at the back. I have another hand in front, 3rd hand that I'm recognizing. 4 hands, fantastic. I've recognized all the 4 hands. We're going to start at the back, white shirt.
Greetings to the panel and to our moderator. My name is Tsumadza. I'd like to thank the panel for the discussions that they had today. They were quite needed to be heard by us as the youth. But I have a question for Honorable Mr. Gwede Mantashe. My question is one of a very niche nature. It is with regards to Notice 700 of 2020 of the National Energy Act, which states that all non-residential buildings require an energy performance certificate. Within that new policy that was brought, it was not clear as to what non-compliance, what are the consequences of non-compliance for, number one, building owners. And why I want to raise this is because we seem to be underestimating the difference in which energy efficiency can do to to the country's state of our energy, you know. I believe, yes, it's very good to focus on capacity, but that of efficiency should not be neglected. So that is my question number 1. And then question number 2, still related on the same matter. Once we have gotten all of this information from building energy efficiency, what happens then? How do we move the nation into that of using smart energy infrastructure moving forward to better our energy usage in the country? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I'll take the second question as well so that we can answer 2 at once. It was the gentleman, yes.
Greetings, everyone. So my question would be addressed to the gentleman on Zoom, and that would be around, there's this quote around, if you want to go far, you must go together, and if you want to go fast, you must go alone. And one of the problems that we face as South Africa is the fact that how do we now keep up and chase the new developments in technology like Web3, decentralized finance, and those issues, while simultaneously facing the challenge like the fact that people don't have access to smartphones at this point, and also data cost and infrastructure around all of those issues. So how do we handle that challenge of making sure that everybody is going to be involved in this process? Or is it even necessary for everyone to be involved? Should we just rely on those who are going to be the specialists to use those tools to create simpler developments for those who are still working on issues around the simple things like getting access to a smartphone and access to Wi-Fi? And then my second question would be towards the Honorable Minister Gwede Mantashe, and that would be around, you emphasized a lot while you were giving your speech when you're starting around education. And I'm in the SRC right now, and we're facing a lot of issues around access to education. And I think what's important to recognize is in both areas of, first of all, the 4th Industrial Revolution, but also in the mining sector, as we are moving away from those sectors, a lot of people who are low-skilled, or opportunities within being low-skilled, will be diminished. So how do we ensure that we are supporting the education sector and doing greater projects than just the bursary schemes, which are there just to capacitate those businesses to do what they're doing, but rather now more rapidly support education towards building capacity for the future as well? Yeah, that's my question.
Thank you very much. I'll start with the Honorable Minister, and then we'll move on to Zoom.
I want to start with the last one. education. The disadvantage I have is that I got my first degree at age 42 and continued studying. And that developed a view to me that says education is a need of all seasons. There's nothing like outdated education. Education opens up the vistas of everybody. I'm one of the few people who do not subscribe to this belief that social scientists are too much. There's no society that will survive without social scientists. I normally engage with engineers. I tell them that you engineers, you like building monuments. To put life into those monuments, you need social scientists. So the issue is how do you adapt the skills you acquired to the needs that you are in what you should be doing. Number two is that adaptation of your skill is also a learning process. I know of an engineer who is quite a good engineer, but we only extracted the best out of him when he acquired an MBA. Okay, because that was a reskilling of a different type, because he went and acquired skills that were needed for the level in the hierarchy where he was. So that's why if you go to companies like ESCOM, you'll find two lanes, in management development, you find technical development. This is new at the same time. So my starting point is that opportunities are there, we should look for them. There's something called low skills. Low skills. You know, one time as a mine worker, an engineer came out of Wits University. He was an electrical engineer. He went to the panel. He wanted to get there with that panel on. We had to tell him as workers, hey, chief, don't enter that place, it's going to kill you. You have to switch it off before you enter. So the point I'm making is that this concept of a lowly skilled actually is a misnomer. I was telling Minister Nancy a few weeks ago that, Minister Nancy, one of the things that were ahead of every sector as mining is recognition of prior learning. And recognition of prior learning is certifying knowledge that you have. Most of you with degrees here, beyond your junior degree, you are certifying knowledge that you have acquired all over. You just certify it, you have already have the knowledge, but you have to structure it properly and certify it. And I'm believing in that because it allows people to continue learning and appreciate that there's nothing like a skill that is not necessary. For example, though we never had a blasting certificate, for drilling, charging up and blasting, we had those skills, but they were not certified and therefore were not remunerated for them. So my own view is that anybody who is exposed to a work situation actually acquires a skill in the process of learning, and therefore that prior learning must be recognized. That process is easier for you as a graduate than a person who is not a graduate. Now, I'm leaving that. I'm going to give you a general answer on the energy efficiency, because I don't want to pretend to be a specialist on the issue. The benefit of energy efficiency is directly accrues to you on the basis of being efficient on using energy. For example, if you leave your geyser on, you go to work, it's running the whole day. It is not what you will get from the state that counts. It's what you will pay as a cost of electricity use on your part. So in the department, there is a unit that is focusing on energy efficiency. And it's one of the most difficult area to understand when they give you a report that we've made a lot of progress in this area also. Because it's not concrete units that you can say, these are the units that we have, these are the units that we've saved. You'll say we've saved overall. And what is not easy to determine is what would have happened if there was no program. But the benefit of energy efficiency is on you getting it. So my own view is that, yes, we must use smart energy systems, but it must not be counterposed to the need for capacity. You know, somebody asked me about load shedding. I normally get punched for this thing called load shedding. And it doesn't help me to deny and say, you know, it belongs to Praveen, it's not me. ESCOM is in Praveen. It's energy. And there's load shedding. And my own argument is, everything we do is supplementary to the need for an ESCOM that is performing optimally. When ESCOM is performing optimally, your efficiency program is more meaningful. That's it. That's it.
Thank you very much. Let's move over to Zoom for our IT question.
No, thanks. Just go back, to what the NYDA also attests to in terms of cheaper Wi-Fi and affordable broadband. I think that's the way to go, because as I said in my speech, that those are enablers. Because without that, it's just like trying to do something and enjoy the infrastructure. You're trying to go and sell to the market, but there are no roads. So that won't help. So I know that the government has done a lot in terms of promoting broadband, and also we've seen some of the tenders that are rolling out to that effect. But that process needs to be expedited, and beginning with the end in mind for affordability. So it has to be done in that way. We cannot have the likes of Mara again. And most of you will understand. We know Mara when it was 2019, the president opened it and launched that manufacturing of the South African smartphone, which has since progressed, and we have been overtaken by Rwanda. So we need, as a collective, to be looking into that. What is it that we can do? And we are capable of doing it. It can be done. And we have the support of the government, because that was supported by the IDC, put money there, and also Standard Bank was also involved, but the IDC was on the forefront. So that kind of investment, the lower price, and that each and every home and every house and every center has a Wi-Fi. And back to my speech, that must be a national agenda in terms of mobilizing that government, big business, labor, that each and every community is involved in this, so that we have mass-scale employment, because the very same people will dig the trenches, because the very same people will lay the fiber, and the very same people then will be trained to program those routers. So I challenge the likes of the multinationals, the likes of Huawei, that also when we look into this system and look into this tender, that there is mandatory issues that are imposed, that you would employ so many thousands in the Eastern Cape, you would employ so many, because those are the people that will be able, to do that within their own communities and then create some jobs in there. So that is very key.
Thank you very much. And before I take the last two questions from the main table, the minister said a funny story about the engineer who they had to stop. And I have my own story to share about that instance where I was the engineer. So he mentioned something very important about just because someone doesn't necessarily have a qualification, it doesn't mean that they have low skill. So as I mentioned, in 2012, I started working at Royal Bafokeng Platinum, and I'm shadowing the geologist, and because I'm new. And after a few weeks, one of the main geologists leaves. He goes to Impala Platinum next door for a higher salary. And they say to me, no more shadowing, you're on your own. And I had to go underground to a panel where the ore body, which is the platinum, had disappeared. So the shift supervisor called me and said, come and help us find it, you are the geologist. I went underground at 5 a.m. to ensure that once the guys had cleaned the face, I could tell them where the reef was. I mean, I've got a 4-year qualification. I walked up and, I crawled up and down that 30-meter panel for 2 hours. It's now almost 9 o'clock, and the team leader taps me on my shoulder and says, "Sebenza ngesikhathi thina. Sifuna ukushaya itshe sihambe." And I was like, I don't know where the ore body is. And he looked at me and he laughed and he said, the ore body is in the floor. And I was like, how do you know that? And he said, yesterday, when we drilled our last hole at the bottom, black water was coming out because the platinum ore body has a chrome seam on top of it. So in drilling at the bottom, when the black water came out, they realized that's the direction they need to mine in. My job was to come and tell them what to do. And they told me where the ore body was. And that was the day I learned, one, humility, ukuzithoba. Just because you are qualified, it doesn't mean that you are skilled. So it's very important when one does find an opportunity to move with the greatest level of respect wherever they are. I'll take the last 2 questions.
Thank you. My first question is for the Group CEO of Gijima. It's a fairly short one. The ICT space is known for being exclusionary and elitist. So what is Gijima doing as part of its social responsibility to make sure that people in rural and township areas have access to Wi-Fi and services provided by the IT industry? My second question is directed to the Minister. I had written down quite a long thing here, but it's fine. Integrating renewable energies into the grid is not as binary or simple as many climate activists have made it to be. It is complicated because these sources are intermittent and do not produce a constant flow of electricity like fossil fuels. This is because renewable energies depend on the weather and storing capabilities are not efficient. Also, when battery storage is supplied to the grid, yields tend to drop sharply. In saying this, what role do you see the renewables playing in our just transition, and what is the DMRE's plan for bid windows for the next 5 to 10 years?
Next question.
Thank you so much. My first question will go to the Minister. COP27 will be taking place in Africa. What, in your own opinion, must an African voice look like going into that conference, particularly from a young African child who is growing up in the continent, characterized by what I would want to term energy poverty, a South African in Langa who is faced with load shedding? What should be their view going to a climate conference such as COP27, capable of making critical decisions of our future? Number 2, I think this question is going to go to the Minister also, as well as Mr. Karim, and maybe the CEO of Gijima can also take part in this. I want to speak to the issue of coordination, right? So, for instance, why has the growth of the mining sector not resulted in one way or the other in the improvement or the development of rural areas? For instance, we are faced with the issue of, let's use the Northwest as an example. Rustenburg, in my own opinion, is long overdue to becoming a city or rather a metropolitan. Mining activities are taking place there, but there's no growth in the town. I want to inquire, particularly to Mr. Wasim Karim, when mining entities are mining precious metals there, why have we failed as government, firstly, to beneficiate the same mineral resources that are being mined there? to develop young people to beneficiate those minerals that are being mined, to ensure that we firstly solve the crisis of employment, but beyond that, create business opportunities, particularly for young people. And then the conversation will go on and go on and go on to infrastructure development and so on and so on. Lastly, Minister Mantashe, I know in Limpopo, Northwest and Northern Cape, that belt is characterized with quite a lot of rare earth metals. Those are minerals for the future. My question is, in your investment conference, when you are bringing investors to these discussions, do we have an initiative to pull young people to the discussions? Because the truth of the matter is that it is a bit appalling that in rooms like this, the people that meaningfully take part in these discussions are quite old people, and young people are always excluded from the conversations, which has in one way or the other led to them feeling like they do not belong in such tables. But I believe that it is our hope it was our job as a council, as the NYDA, to reaffirm to a young person from Khayelitsha that a discussion on energy, a discussion on mining is not a discussion that is preserved for anyone else but for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those questions. Honorable Minister, may I start with, yes, thank you very much. So the CEO of Gijima will first give us his response to the ICT question, and then we'll come back to the Minister, who's got quite a long list there. So if you're over to Zoom.
Yes, no, thanks. So what is Gijima doing in that space? Well, a lot, but a lot needs to be done. For instance, so, you know, we've got about 600 field service engineers that are around the country. We've got about 56 touch points, including the point of presence, including rural areas. So, and that includes about 400 permanent staff and then 200 from the SMEs, because we want to grow, so we have attachment to the SMEs that we are growing and transferring skills. Now, so firstly, most of those field service engineers come from our stable in terms of our training. So we train them. But they're doing a very important job. They're supporting FNB, they're supporting Standard Bank, NetBank, so they are all, wherever there's a bank, they are there to support. Each and every one of them will have an iPad, and also a dongle for Wi-Fi, especially working in the rural areas. Yes, it is problematic in terms of coverage of Wi-Fi, but yeah, those people are there. So in terms of employment, I mean, so we have a number of youth that are employed, I mean, in excess of 400, as I've stated, but a lot still need to be done in that space. And that's what brings me back to that question that we need to then to be able to bring down the cost and then to lay that in terms of broadband that the government is driving now to lay out, I mean, in all provinces, so that then it becomes easier to work in there, because it's very important we have that Wi-Fi, that internet coverage for the people to be able to work. So there's massive investment there in terms of training and employment that is growing as we grow the base in terms of our customer base. So we are also now supporting the police. So every police station in the country is managed systems, and the infrastructure managed by Gijima, and all those young men are there, and young women fulfilling on that, and come from our stable in terms of training. As the minister has said before, I mean, so they come as graduates, they come as having their diplomas, but then they need that kind of explaining to get the skills, because as I said before, they can absorb, they are teachable, and we need to do that. But let me conclude by saying that a lot still needs to be done. And what we have done as well, because we're not concentrating only on the infrastructure and hardware, we are also on the application side of things. We've started a school of digital where we are training and certifying a lot of young people in that space.
Thank you very much for that. Over to the Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much. Integration of renewables to the grid. If you want 10 megawatts of electricity from a coal-generated entity. For a renewable, you require 30 megawatts. The reason for that is that renewables, your PV, solar, will give you electricity as long as the sun shines, and do not give you electricity at night unless you have supplemented that with base load equipment, either battery or supported by different technology. So that is an issue that we understand. That's why if you read the IRP 2019, you will discover that where we are saying coal-generated energy will reduce from 75% to about 60% and below. And we say renewables will grow by 18%. That is where it comes with. That means we're moving from high carbon emission to low carbon emission. But we've supplemented that with other technologies. We've provided for 3,000 megawatts from gas, which I think should be increased. That's my view. We have said we must have 1,500 megawatts from coal. And people ask me, why coal at this time and age? I say we must continue experimenting with clean coal technology. You can't do it theoretically. You'll have to experiment with it. We have made provision for nuclear, alternatively, hydro energy. That hydro was linked to the INGA project, which is very, very slow. We said if it's not INGA, we'll have to move to nuclear. Because today, the lowest cost electricity comes from nuclear, comes from Quebec. It is only Quebec that gives us electricity at 40 cents a unit. So, that's where we are. So, read the IRP 2019, understand the combination of technologies that we're putting forward to have a sustainable energy supply. Because as we go low on carbon emission, we must also invest on fighting energy poverty. Now, what should be the voice of Africa in COP27? My own view is simple answer is that we should explain a just energy transition as we understand it. You see, we went to Glasgow, thanks to Australia, thanks to India, thanks to China, for resisting a resolution on moving out of coal, and say we must scale out of coal. Thanks to those. If it was for us, we would have agreed on actually moving out of coal. And my own view is we should outgrow the question of being an encircled nation and begin to stand for what is right for us. For example, everybody says net zero should be 2050. China say no, 2060. India say 2070. Because they make their proposal on the basis of their understanding of the level of development, not on what is nice and what make you appear good. The next question is, why is growth of mining not resulted in improvement of rural areas? And the President will cite a wrong example, Rustenburg. It's a very wrong example, because if you know Rustenburg, the structure of Rustenburg will tell you that it is not true that it is the same because it rolled down. It's not the same. Rustenburg used to be a Dorpe, okay? And we used to go there, organize workers, find it difficult to find a restaurant to eat. Today, Rustenburg is developed. It has sub-areas, commercial areas. It is growing in numbers. Actually, Rustenburg and Polokwane are two examples of towns that benefited from mining. Those two towns, they are both rural. Tubatse, which is, should be Tubatse, but it is called Beggars. Beggarsford. It's named after a general who never defeated Skukun once. Should have grown faster than it is. Then if you cited Beggarsford as an example, you would be correct. But if you cite Polokwane and Rustenburg, it's a wrong example. Those are improved rural towns that are actually cities. They are left with few issues to become metros. Where are the young people when we have investment conferences? Some are there, maybe not in numbers that you are expecting. Let me tell you my other experience, is that you have an investment conference, you open it up and say people must come. Instead of coming to the investment conference, people come with a march and want to disrupt that conference. All those are young people. Until you explain to them that, listen, let's have a meeting of ourselves and you. I can tell you, President, that that meeting with the business forum of no business people in Rustenburg has taken place. And we're assessing results of that engagement. Because you must appreciate that when we talk of investment in mining, we're not only talking about ownership of mines, we're also talking about benefit from procurement processes. Out of those procurement processes, there must be business people who emerge and grow. We talk about employment equity. Number of managers who are there are important to us. And we're not doing badly. They're actually in a research that we did last year. We discovered all the major mining companies are not having less than 50% black managers. And we also discovered something else, that they're doing well at the top than at the bottom. Because at the top you can poach, buy a manager from another company to another company. Maybe one executive is counted 3 times because he's moved to 3 companies in one financial year. But at the bottom, you must develop a miner up the hierarchy, to chief overseer, to mine overseer. But the reality of the matter is that young people must be present, people must come, young people must be organized. Young people do not have a role of just disrupting. Young people must come and participate and benefit from investment conferences. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Honorable Minister, on that point, in a week's time, the world will be at this doorstep discussing mining in Daba and discussing investments not only in South Africa but globally. I am an owner of a small 100% black female-owned business. Myself and my partner cannot afford to come to mining in Daba. Myself and my partner wanted to go to a conference with coal, discussing coal investments and coal opportunities, and we did not go because we could not afford to. So sometimes young people are not inside the room because provisions are not made for them to be able to access those rooms.
The mining in Daba is an international conference. It's not a South African conference. It is here, but it's an international conference. In that process, that's why we have people that we host, other hosted by other people in South Africa to give them access there. So your business and your partner, you're not talking to people.
The right people, clearly.
You are not talking to people. You want to enter there, you can't afford. Talk to people, you get hosted by people who are in the mining industry. I don't know if it's still open. I'm not doing administration, but many of the people who cannot afford, we take them to the mining industry. I'm taking 10, for example.
Yes.
I'm taking 10 people who cannot afford getting there, but they will have 10 extra people in the mining indaba will be there. So that is where social compacting is.
Yes.
Is where we talk, we facilitate presence of people to these events. For example, we had a session with coal producers in Council for Geoscience. Everybody was there, Anders was free. We had the whole day together, we discussed their role, and anybody who was interested would have been there.
Opportunity to come.
Okay.
Yes.
In this regional conference I'm talking about, we don't charge a fee. So if you are not in Purugwana, you are not in Rustenburg, you are not in Kimberley, it's not because you can't afford. It's because you don't want to go. It's too small for you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to say thank you so much to my panelists for an incredible conversation. Thank you for joining us on Zoom. But a big thank you to the SAIC team. I think what's very important to know is sometimes you cannot be what you cannot see. And for SAIC to bring all these people into the room, Gijima is a black-owned organization. And as you can see, Gijima has a black CEO run and managed by black people. We have an honorable minister who got his qualification at the age of 42 and worked his way up until he got his master's degree. So black child, it is here for you to see it is possible. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Norris.
Thank you so much, Noluthando, and the panelists for that impactful, amazing discussion. Unfortunately, we have really run out of time, so we have to close up. Otherwise, now we have to go out there and really put in the work. Overall, the whole take from the whole conference was really about the need to challenge policy that needs to be reformed, collaboration amongst all actors in the economy, opening access to key sectors and crucial information, and also expanding technical skills was part of the takeoffs. Most importantly, in the words of Zwazibini Tunzi, who said, "Take up space." With that further said, I'd like to call upon the chairman of SAIC, Ubonga Makhanya, to give his closing remarks.
Mandla. No, thanks, comrades, colleagues. On behalf of all of the South African Youth Economic Council's executive, I would like to thank each and every, firstly, young person that's in the room who came to support us. I would like to thank all of our speakers, the moderators, for an impactful 2 days discussing job creation, discussing policy and creative ways of ensuring that we deal directly with the challenge of youth unemployment. I would like to thank our partners and sponsors, the Petroleum Agency of South Africa, Huawei, the National Youth Development Agency, as well as the DMRE, who have been supportive since day one and have held our hand through this entire journey. We would like to thank especially the minister who took his time to honor the invite. We understand that we live in a very dynamic space. We're in an election year. Politicians give you all sorts of promises and they never follow through. But we can see that there is some hope. There's still a few who follow through. You would have seen on the program we were scheduled to have, I think, at least 2 deputy ministers. But on the day of the event, they literally pulled out last minute. So we would really like to extend a heartfelt gratitude towards the minister, who has shown that he takes the issues of young people seriously, who has shown that when he's called to task, he always follows through. We would like to thank the CEO of the NYDA for always assisting us, being a supportive structure. As a new organization, people and other leaders tend to not take you seriously, or it's either they're quite interested in your work. So to see our colleagues taking this council seriously, investing in it, investing their time, investing resources, for us as a council, we would really like to say thank you for that. We would like to invite each and every one of you to our next program, which will be in PE, with the Mayor of PE, the Minister of Transport, where we would be creating opportunities for SMMEs in the maritime economy. We would like to move away from hotels and conferences and start to integrate small businesses into procurement, and we're very deliberate about that. We want young people to be involved in procurement processes of the state, of private companies, and we're going to start programs where owners of small businesses can find themselves in those spaces. So the work continues. We have a long year plan, and please keep in touch through our social media programs, through television, print. You'll hear from us on all sorts of media platforms, sharing our views on how the structure of the economy should look like, and all the developments. So on that note, I would like to officially close the Youth Jobs Mbizo for 2022, and wishing you a safe journey back into all your various places, Langa, Eastern Cape, Gauteng, some of you. And we hope to see you at our future programs, and being supportive of all young people and all young youth-based organizations, not just us, but supporting all young people in your corners. So on that note, we'd like to say thank you, and I'm officially closing the South African Youth Jobs Mbizo. Thank you.